All right, hello and welcome everyone to this week's webinar about PPC automation. My name is Franz. I'm one of the founders of Sellics, and I'm very happy to teach you how to use Sellics and its automation feature today to automate your PPC campaigns in order to get better results. That's the goal of this session today. I do have a few slides prepared where I'm going to show you let's say, more the theoretical kind of background of the automation, but then we'll also jump right into the tool, into a demo account, to then show you exactly how to set it up, set up the rules directly in the demo account. So that's the plan for today. There will be a recording of this webinar, so if you do need to leave early, or if you want to share it with someone else in your company, then you will receive a recording by email afterwards. So there's no problem about this. And lastly, if you do have any questions during the presentation, feel free to just type it in the chat box that you should find in the lower right corner, and then I will answer those questions as we go. So don't worry about this. Feel free to ask any questions. With that being said, let's just get started right away. So what I want to show to you today is how to use the Sellics PPC rules to set up a strategy which is to optimize for a certain target ACOS. Now, obviously, there are many different strategies and goals that you can have with sponsored products, but probably the most common one is really to optimize for a certain target ACOS that you have in mind, right? So it could be 20%, 15, 30%, whatever it is, but to optimize for a certain target ACOS. Other strategies could be to optimize for a certain profit. It could be to optimize for a certain share of voice, right? So those are other strategies that are totally legitimate to have, right? But so today in the presentation, I'm gonna focus on how to optimize for a certain target ACOS, because we feel that this is certainly the strategy that is the most important one, and that most sellers are actually following. So typically, most sellers, obviously, when you run some campaigns, you do have a certain ACOS that you achieve, right? So in this example, the actual ACOS would be 32%. So this is the ACOS that you currently have, right? That's important in terms of the naming. The ACOS that you currently have is the one that we call the actual ACOS. Now, this is different from the target ACOS, right? And so typically this is what we see. Typically we see that the actual ACOS that our users are having when they join Sellics is a lot higher than what they're actually aiming for, right? So it could be that you have a current ACOS of 32%, but you're actually achieving or aiming for a target ACOS of 20%, right? So the actual ACOS is the ACOS that you have, whereas the target ACOS is the ACOS that you want to have, right? And now the key question is, how do you get from this ACOS, from the 32% down to 20%, right? How do you get from your actual ACOS that might be a bit too high to your target ACOS that you're really aiming for and you want to have? And so that's going to be the key question throughout the presentation, because that's essentially the strategy of optimizing for a certain target ACOS. So how do you get from a higher ACOS of 32%, or in general just a higher current ACOS, down to a certain target ACOS that you're aiming for? And so I think what's important to understand is that this is not as complicated as it might seem. I know that there is a certain, let's say, a certain fear in the seller community about Amazon PPC, because it seems like a very complex topic, and I agree that it's certainly one of the most complex one in the Amazon space. But at the same time, it's also not as complex as you might think. So let me show you how easy the basic idea really is. So basically, if we have a campaign with multiple keywords, so here we just assume that there are 4 keywords in a campaign, you will have target ACOS for all those keywords, right? So typically the target ACOS within one ad group or within one campaign is the same, right? So all keywords in this one ad group will have the same target ACOS. In this example, the target acres is 25%. Now, out of those 4 keywords, there will be some keywords where the actual acres is actually higher than your target acres, right? So here in this case, barbecue gloves has an acres of 48%, where you're aiming for 25%, and silicone barbecue gloves also has an acre of 32%, while the acres is at 25%, the target acres. So you have those 2 keywords where the actual acres is higher than the target acres that you're aiming for. And now the action in order to make sure that you actually hit your target acres is fairly simple. You just need to decrease your keyword bid, right? So if your actual acres is higher than your target acres, what you need to do is you need to decrease the keyword bid. If you have a keyword where the acres is fairly close to your target acres, right? So in this case, we have an actual acre of 24% and we're aiming for 25%. Then the recommendation is to do nothing, right? Because it's already very close to where you want to get to. So there's no need to make any significant changes. And finally, we also have some keywords where the acres is actually below your target acres. So we have an acres of 16% while we're aiming for 25%. So here the action essentially would be to increase the bid. This is a bit surprising to some sellers, right? So they wonder, why should I increase the bid if I have a very good acres? Well, basically the idea is that if you increase your bid, you might improve your ad rank and just rank higher. And this way you probably pay a bit more and your acres will increase, but your sales will increase even more, right? So the idea is that by increasing the bid, you improve the ad rank, and by improving the ad rank, you just increase the sales volume. So you'll say more units, even if the acres may go down. So if you want to summarize this, it is basically very simple. So the strategy consists of 2 things. If the actual acres is above your target acres, then you want to decrease the bid. And if the actual acres is below the target acres, then you want to increase the keyword bid. Right? It's that simple. It's those 2 things. And so now you can see those are essentially if this then that kind of rules, right? So if the acres is above target acres, then you want to decrease the bid. And if the target acres is if the acres below your target acres, then you want to increase your keyword bid. And so now what you could do now is you could log in every day into your account and see if there are any keywords where the acres is actually above your target acres or below your target acres. And depending on this, you could then make some changes. Or you could use Sellics to now automate this entire process here. So to automate exactly this by setting up rules, and those rules are exactly what I just showed here, right? So that if this and that kind of rules. So let me hop into our demo account here at Sellics. So you should be seeing the Sellics screen now. We are here in the PPC manager, and within the PPC manager, we're in the tab Automate, right? So this is where we are right now. So in order to navigate to this page, you need to click PPC manager and then Automate. And so the Automate tab essentially allows you to set up if this then that rules, and those rules will be used by Sellics to then automatically manage and adjust your campaigns. So let me just show you what I mean by this. It starts by creating a new ad rule. So you click on this button here, add new rule set, and then you will need to choose whether you want to create a rule set for a manual campaign or for an automatic campaign. Note that the reason you need to choose here between those 2 campaign types is that the actions you can take are actually different between manual campaigns and automatic campaigns. This is why you need to choose here. But let's just go ahead and create one for manual campaigns. So I just click here for manual campaigns. And so now I have this new rule set that first of all I will need to give it a name. So I'm just going to call it AMZ Demo June, right? That's the name of the rule set. So one rule set could consist of more than one rule, right? So you have a rule set, and then within this rule set you have various rules, and then we can just continue by creating our first rule within this rule set. So let's just call this rule set lower bid if acres above target acres. right? That's a very simple rule, the one that I just showed before, or that I just explained before. So essentially it says to lower the bid if the ACOS is above the target ACOS. And now we can use those rules here, and we can actually recreate a strategy. So we can say if, that's the first part of the rule, right? So if the ACOS, and we may choose also from other KPIs, but in this case we're gonna go ahead with ACOS. So if the ACOS is not smaller than, but is actually above, right? So we just change the symbol here, above, and now we can set a certain ACOS threshold, right? So we can enter a custom ACOS value. So let's just say if it is above 20%, right? So if we aim for 20% ACOS, we can say that if the ACOS is above 20% after a certain number of clicks. So let's just go here with, let's say, 20 clicks. Then the action is to not increase the keyword bid, but in this case, we want to decrease the keyword bid. So we just decrease keyword bid by 20%, for instance. And that's already it, right? So we get started. If the ACOS is above 20%, that would be our condition. After at least 20 clicks, that's the time frame. So if the condition is met within a certain time frame, then it's triggering a certain action. And the action in this case would be to decrease the keyword bid by 20%. So that's the rule. You can see it's as easy as that. So we can just hit save rule set. And then we have this rule created. So like I just showed before, there's also another rule that we would need to create, which is to increase bid if ACOS is below your target ACOS, right? So that's kind of the balancing rule. And so we just create the same, but we invert the signs here. So if the ACOS is below 20% after, let's say, 20 clicks, then you want to increase the keyword bid by 20%, right? We hit save rules. And again, that's about it. So now the rule is created. We have those two rules. One rule that would constantly lower the bid if you're above your target ACOS, and another one that will constantly increase the bid if you're below your target ACOS. So what's important to note now is that those rules have been created, but they have not been assigned to an ad group or to a campaign yet, which means that they're not really making any changes. What you need to do is you need to assign a rule set to a specific campaign that you want to automate with this particular rule set. So you can create hundreds of different rule sets. And so you might want to say might want to create one rule set for one campaign and another rule set for another campaign. So what you need to do is you need to assign this rule set that you created to some campaigns that you want to automate, right? So you just click on this little button here that says 0 active ad groups. You hit select specific ad groups. And so now you can choose which of those ad groups you actually want to manage, right? And so now we can just go here with MIB test and the testing campaign, and then so we just hit OK, and then we will now assign this MIB testing campaign to this rule set. We can see now that we have one active ad group here for this rule set, and starting from now, once per day, Sellics will check all keywords in this campaign and see if there are any keywords match those criteria, right? So if ACOS above or below 20% after 20 clicks, and if we find one of those keywords, we will automatically adjust the bid here by 20%, either increase or decrease the keyword bid, right? So it's as easy as this. So shortly after midnight, we get the data from the previous day, and then once we have the data, we see if any keyword fit or apply match those conditions, and if they do, then we just trigger a rule. So I hope this makes sense so far. So there's a question from Thomas asking if it works the same for automatic campaigns. Yes, so for automatic campaigns, you would need to create another rule set. So you click here on add new rule set, and then you don't choose manual campaigns, but you choose automatic campaigns. But then you can say, you can create exactly demo 2, right, you can create exactly the same rules, right, that you can create in for manual campaigns. Obviously, for automatic campaigns, you cannot change the individual keyword bid because there is no keyword bid for automatic campaigns. You can only increase or decrease the ad group bid, right? So that's the only difference. Yeah, that's about it. You can create exactly the same campaign. Cool. So let's just go ahead. I hope that this is like the that this was good or easy to understand. Now, obviously, most sellers do understand how those rules work from a let's say from a technological point of view, but they're struggling with how to actually set those rules and how to set the condition and the time frame and the action. So the what I want to do now in the next step is I want to go through the single parts of those rules, and I want to work on why you should on how to set the ACoS limit and how to set the clicks and so on, right? So we go through this step by step. So the first questions that many sellers have is, what ACoS limit should I use, right? So what's a good ACoS is a highly searched keyword on Google. And I understand that this is probably the most important question, right? So what's a good target ACoS? Should you aim for 5%, 10%, 15, 20, 30, 50%, right? What's a good ACoS? Unfortunately, I can't give you an exact ACoS number, but what I can show you is basically how you can define a good target ACoS for yourself very easily. So basically, the ACoS really depends on, a good target ACoS really depends on your margins. So any product, and has a certain set of fees and costs, right? So we have Amazon fees, FBA fees, unit costs, and shipping costs. But eventually, we have a profit margin for this product, right? So in this example, so if we assume that this is the entire product, in this example, we just assume that we have a profit margin of 20%. So 20% is the profit margin of this product. Now that's important. Before PPC, right? So this is before spending any money on advertising. So when you know that 20% is your net margin before PPC, then the question is, how much of this margin are you actually willing to invest into advertisement in order to generate a sale, right? Or in other words, how much net margin do you want to keep after PPC from this product, right? And basically, depending on your answer, you will have your target ACoS or your net margin after PPC. So if you do have a 20% margin before PPC and you want to keep 5% after PPC, you can invest up to 15% into ads, right? This would mean that your target ACoS essentially is 15%, right? So that's, I think, is very straightforward. Typically, for those that maybe don't want to do this calculation or can't do this calculation, if you want some reference point, I can tell you that most sellers have an ACoS in the range of 15 to 35%. That's kind of the target ACoS that most sellers are aiming for. So kind of as a bracket. So if you really have no clue, I would suggest something like 20, maybe 25% target ACoS that you should aim for. Now, obviously, the challenge is that the margins differ for each product. And this means that each campaign might require a different target ACoS. So if you have one product where you have a target ACoS of 15% and you create one campaign for this one product, then you would need to create a rule that says if the ACoS is above 15%, then you want to decrease the keyword bid. And if you have a second product with a target ACoS of 20%, then you will need to create a second rule that says if the ACoS is above 20%, right? Now, this would be quite painful if you would need to do this for all the different campaigns that you have, if they have a different target ACoS, right? So you would probably need to create tens or even hundreds of different rules here in Sellics to automate your campaigns. Now, the advantage here now is in Sellics is that we have created so-called dynamic rules. And so those dynamic rules, they don't require a certain number to enter. a certain target acres that you enter, but instead you can just you can just work with a variable target acres. So instead of entering a fixed acres number here, you just enter target acres, and then you upload the target acres for all your campaigns in a separate sheet. And what Sellics will do now is Sellics will pull all the individual target acres from all the campaigns and will manage those campaigns with the individual target acres that you've uploaded. But you only need to create one rule instead of creating hundreds of rules. So that's a huge. This makes it a lot easier to manage also big selections because you can just easily manage this. So how do you upload the target acres? Well, basically it's very easy. You just download an Excel template from Sellics, you enter your target acres, and you upload the file back to Sellics again, right? So let me show you how this looks in Sellics. So again, we're here in the screen. You will see here there's on the left side there is a number that says add groups with target acres, and it says 3 out of 4. So in this demo account, we have 4 ad groups, but only 3 ad groups of them have a target acres. So what we do now in order to upload the new acres is we just click on this button here, and then we have the little pop-up appearing. There is an explanation of how this works also, so if you may want to read it afterwards. But basically, you just click this big button here, download Excel template. This will now generate an Excel template. So down here you can see the file. You just open the file by clicking on it, and then let me check. I think it's open on a second screen. Yep. So here we go. Let me just pull it back to the other screen. So I'm working with 2 screens here. So that's basically how the file looks like. The first tab will be an introduction, again explaining all the how this works, and then basically you will have one tab for all the countries that you're having running campaigns in. So now you will the tab or the sheet essentially looks like this. You have your campaign in column A, your ad groups in column B, you have your break-even acres in column C. Now note that this break-even acres is calculated automatically by Sellics if you update your cost of goods in the profit dashboard. So that's one of the great advantages of having an all-in-one tool like Sellics, is that you have your profit calculation right in there, so we can use this profit calculation to make the process easier for you. And now finally in column D you have the target acres, and so now here you may enter whatever number you want for each campaign. So you can just enter different target acres and just make it very scalable. So you enter your target acres here, and if you have hundreds of campaigns, and you can enter all of this here. You save this file and the changes that you made, and then you go back into Sellics. You hit upload target acres button here. And then you just choose the wizard from the wizard here. You just choose the file that you just modified, right? And then it will upload all the different acres numbers for the campaign. And so now the big advantage here is instead of creating rule sets that go like here where we have 20% acres, we can just create a new rule that says essentially exactly the same that we have here at the top, right? So we want to increase the bid if it is above target acres. And now the big difference is that instead of entering 20% here, you just choose target acres, right? So you can choose here whether you want to use your target acres, your break-even acres, or if you want to enter a custom acres view. But if you choose a target acres, then we will automatically pull the target acres that you've just uploaded for your different campaigns, and we will use this target acres. And this obviously makes it a lot easier for you because you don't need, again, to create rules for every different target acres, but you just create one rule that refers to the target acres, and then Sellics will pull the target acres from the campaigns that you have uploaded for. Does that make sense so far? There seem to be no questions, but again, I want to encourage you, if you have any questions, feel free to follow up, right? So that's for how to set the target ACOS. The next question is, how long should I wait before adjusting bids? And this is definitely the most complicated question when you're running sponsor price campaigns. One thing that's important to understand here is the impact of the conversion rate. A 5% conversion rate means nothing else that on average every 20th click leads to a sale. A 10% conversion rate means that on average every 10th click leads to a sale. A 20% conversion rate means every 5th click leads to a sale, right? So there's a very strong connection between your conversion rate and the numbers of clicks that you need on average to generate a sale, right? I guess it makes sense. If you have a 10% conversion rate, that means 10 out of 100 people will buy your product, which means, in other words, 1 out of 10. So you need 10 clicks to generate one sale, right? That's a very important thing to understand. Now, what we suggest is that you wait at least 1 times the expected number of clicks before making any change. So if you have a 5% conversion rate, we suggest you wait at least 20 clicks. If you have a 10% conversion rate, we suggest you wait at least 10 clicks. And if you have a 20% conversion rate, we suggest you wait at least 5 clicks. And why are we suggesting this? Well, basically, it's very easy. If you make any changes before reaching this threshold here, then you're basically making decisions on incomplete data, right? So if you decide that if you have a conversion rate of 10%, that means you need 10 clicks. If you get 1 click and you immediately pause this keyword or you lower the bid, then essentially you didn't even give this keyword a chance to prove that it's performing, because this keyword needs 10 clicks on average to generate a sale. And so if you stop a keyword after 1 click already, then it's kind of a premature action, because you didn't even give it a chance to perform the way it is performing on average, right? Now, luckily, it is very easy to calculate the expected number of clicks, which is just 100 divided by your conversion rate. So if your conversion rate is 5, it's 100 divided by 5, which is then obviously 20, right? So that's the key thing. And so this concept here is very, very important to understand. So what we suggest is, instead of waiting or measuring the time frame in actually the time, we suggest to measure the time frame in clicks. And the reason for this is simple. Let's assume that you have 2 products with a 10% conversion rate. That means you need 10 clicks to make a decision whether you want to change something with that keyword. Now, if you get 10 clicks per week for product 1, you will not have enough data to make a decision after 1 day, right? If you have another product where you get 500 clicks per week, after 1 day you will have more than enough data to make a decision, right? Because you get like 70 clicks per day or so, right? That means after 1 day for this product you cannot make a decision, whereas for this product you can make a decision. That means if you go in, let's say, once per week, then you might, for some campaigns you will have too much data, and for other campaigns you will not have enough data. So what we suggest is that you don't wait a certain number of days or weeks until you manage your keywords, but that you wait a certain number of clicks. Okay, so you wait 10 clicks, you wait the expected number of clicks, and once you hit those 10 clicks, then you take the action. And if it's after 1 day, then you take the action after 1 day. And if it's after 1 month, then you take the action after 1 month only. Okay. Now, so Thomas is leaving. See ya, Thomas. You'll get the recording. The thing now is, again, the same problem that we just saw before with the ACOS, is that if you have different conversion rates, you have a different number of clicks that you are supposed to wait, which would mean that you need to create different campaigns, different rules again for all the different numbers of clicks that you have, right? So if you have 20 clicks, you need to create a rule with 20 clicks. And if you have 10 clicks, you need to create a rule with 10 clicks. Now, what we have created again in 6 is a dynamic version of those rules. So instead of entering a fixed number of clicks, you can actually enter a multiple of the expected number of clicks, right? So you can choose 1x, which is 1 times the expected number of clicks, 1.5x or 2x, which is 1.5 times the expected number of clicks, or 2 times the expected number of clicks. So to clarify this point, basically what we do is for a campaign with a 5% conversion rate, we just calculate 20 clicks as the expected value. And if you choose 1x, we will wait for 20 clicks. If you choose 1.5x, we will wait for 30 clicks. And if you choose 2x, then we will wait for 40 clicks before making any changes. And so the beauty of this is that you don't need to do any calculation here of how many clicks you want to have. You just choose whether you want to have 1x, 1.5x, and 2x, and we will calculate the exact click threshold based on the campaign's conversion rate for all your campaigns individually, and then take this threshold when we trigger those rules. Okay. So basically what's important to understand is what's the difference between 1x, 1.5x, and 2x. Basically, it's a trade-off between ad spend and precision. So the longer you wait, the more you will spend, but the more precise the decision will be. The shorter you wait, the less you will spend, and also the less precise the decision will be. What we suggest in general is to do 1x as a default case, and sometimes go to 1.5x. 2x is actually quite a long time, so we suggest to stay on the lower end here, because it would just make decisions faster and actions faster. So going back to the rules. So basically, again, let me just show you. So the way it works is here that after at least you can just choose whether you want to enter a number of clicks, or whether you want to choose between 1x, 1.5, and 2x, right? So you can just go like, okay, I want to have 1.5x, and then Sellics will dynamically calculate the right click threshold for each ad group based on your product's conversion rate. Okay. And then so finally, the last questions that many sellers have is, by how much should I actually adjust my bid, right? So by how much should I increase or decrease my bid? So basically, what we give here as a rule of thumb is just to go with 30%. So we suggest that 30% is a good rule of thumb. If you choose something less than 30%, then the changes are just too small to really have an impact. If you go significantly above 30%, then you will probably see you will probably see too much of a jump in the bid, and you will go beyond the reasonable bid, right? So 30% is a very good rule of thumb. So let me see if there are any questions. No more questions at this point. So let me just show the best practices. So we do have some best practices, and those best practices, by the way, are already created for you in your account. So if you go into your Sellics account and you go here, you will have a best practice rule set for automatic campaigns and also best practice rule set for manual campaigns, right? So if you want, you can just click here on this button and then assign those rule sets, those best practice rule sets to your campaign, and then we will manage all your campaigns following those best practice rule sets. You may also adjust those best practice rule sets, but it's very easy. It's very easy to use them. Now, those best practice rule sets consist of 3 or 4 rules, right? So in the automatic ad group, we have those. The first rule is obviously that we want to increase the bid if it is below a target ACOS. We want to lower the bid if the ACOS is above the target ACOS. So those are the rules that we just created, right? So if ACOS below target ACOS, and then we have a certain threshold here, then we want to increase the ad group bid, or we want to decrease the ad group bid. And so those are the 2 rules that we discussed already at the beginning. And then finally, we have a third rule that says move the search terms to negative if they generate clicks but no sales. And this is a very important thing as well. So we all know those keywords. Those are keywords or search terms that constantly generate clicks but never generate any sale. And so what's important is to pause those search terms on a regular basis. And so we suggest you create this rule here that says if you have 0 orders after 25 clicks, then you move the search term to negative. So that's for automatic campaigns. For manual campaigns, we have a very similar setup, right? Where we have the same rules. So we want to increase the bid if it's below target ACOS. We want to lower the bid if it's above target ACOS. And we're pausing keywords if they constantly get clicks but never get any sale. So the difference between the auto and the manual campaign is primarily here that we, in the manual campaign, we take action faster and we're a bit more restrictive, right? So here we have a boundary of 2.5%. In both directions. Here we have 7.5% and 2%. And also here we wait, in the auto campaign, we wait 1.5 clicks, whereas in the manual campaign, we just wait 1 click. And then also we have a rule here, but so, I need to emphasize this rule is kind of optional. It's a rule that says increase bid if low impressions. And it says that if you have less than 1,000 impressions after 7 days, then you want to increase the keyword bid. And so the idea of this rule is essentially that if you get low impressions, there are typically two reasons for it, right? So one reason is that there's just not more search volume. So you already rank on page number 1, but there's just no more search volume. The other reason is that you're just not bid enough. So it's a very competitive keyword, high volume, but you rank on page 5 or so. So you get a very small fraction of all impressions. And so this rule essentially makes sure that you avoid the second situation, right? So it will constantly increase the bid until you get at least 1,000 impressions to make sure that you're really bidding enough. This rule is a bit can be a bit dangerous as well, because obviously there's a certain tendency that you will just increase the bid for many keywords that are in the long tail, right, and just don't have more than 1,000 impressions to get in the first place. So it's a bit complicated. If you don't want to use this rule, you can just either pause it or you can just delete it. But we wanted to add it here as well to make sure that you have a choice here. All right, so I do have some little extra information regarding the attribution time frame. So this is I don't know if I should share this. Maybe if you can just leave a comment whether I should talk about the attribution time frame as well. Other than this, that's pretty much it from my side. I want to give you the time to either ask some more questions, or if you want me to talk about the attribution window, let me know as well. Generally, we are repeating this webinar on a weekly basis. So if you do have any questions or concerns, then we are going to have this webinar again next week. So if you want to join again another time, or if you have some other team members that want to join, then this webinar happens on a regular basis. All right, looks like there are no more questions. Also, nobody wants me to talk about the attribution window, which I kind of understand because it's a fairly complex topic. Thank you guys for your attention. I wish you lots of success on Amazon, and feel free to reach out to us if you do have any questions. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.